Reproductor de vídeo. Voz desactivada.
Grabar. Encabezado. Fetch controls. Pausar grabación.
To welcome French President Macron and Mrs. Macron to the White House. Thank you very much. Great honor. We're thrilled that the first official state visit of my presidency is not only with a great friend, but with a leader of America's oldest ally, the Republic of France. Today in our nation's capital, the Stars and Stripes proudly fly alongside the tricolor flag, a symbol of the world and to the world, of unity, fraternity, and friendship that forever links our nations together. 40 years after the end of our War of Independence, the great General Lafayette traveled to George Washington's home at Mount Vernon to visit the grave of the father of our country. President Macron, we're deeply moved that nearly 2 centuries later, the President of the Republic of France made that same tribute last night. It was a beautiful evening. Thank you. Thank you very much. This past summer, Melania and I had an incredible visit with you and Brigitte in Paris to celebrate Bastille Day. We were awed by the beauty of your country and the grateful hospitality of your incredible people. They are incredible people. Together, we commemorated the 100th anniversary of America's entry into the First World War. We remembered the French and American patriots who shed their blood together in defense of civilization. Their noble sacrifice will echo through time forever, an immortal tribute to our people and to our freedom. During the horror of the First World War, more than 1 million people were killed or injured from chemical warfare. In the aftermath of that horror, civilized nations came together to ban chemical weapons. 2 weeks ago, following Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's barbaric use of chemical weapons against his own people, the United States, France, and the United Kingdom joined together to strike at the heart of the Syrian chemical weapons program. These actions were designed to establish a strong deterrent against the use of these heinous weapons. President Macron, I thank you for your leadership in this effort. And it was a well-executed effort at that. And I thank you, the members of the French military, for their courage and their great skill. The United States and France are also cooperating to prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons. We are grateful for France's key partnership in our campaign of maximum pressure on the North Korean regime.
Twitter. Ahora, Alan por el mundo tuiteo. Cuando vayan a signo de número Dublín, piérdanse en Temple Bar. Voz desactivada.
And security for the whole Korean peninsula, and in fact, for the whole world. However, in pursuit of peace, we will not repeat the mistakes of past administrations. The campaign of maximum pressure will continue. France and the United States also agree that Iran cannot be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, and that regime must end its support of terrorism. All over, no matter where you go in the Middle East, you see the fingerprints of Iran behind problems. I also want to thank President Macron for France's vital contribution to our very successful campaign against ISIS. As we drive these ISIS killers from Syria, it is essential that the responsible nations of the Middle East step up their own contributions to prevent Iran from profiting off the success of our anti-ISIS effort. Very rich countries are in the Middle East, They have to make major contributions. They have not been doing it as they should. A major topic that we discussed a little while ago. They have to step up tremendously, not a little bit, but tremendously, their financial effort. Mr. President, on behalf of the American people, I again express our solidarity in the wake of the terrorist attack in southern France last month. I share the confidence you conveyed at the memorial service for the heroic Colonel Beltram, that in time we will achieve the ultimate triumph of right and of justice. In the fight against terrorism, we both know that we must be strong from within to defend ourselves from threats outside. We will do what we must to protect our countries. You are our oldest ally, and you are truly one of our great allies, and we appreciate it. We will always be there for you. Both the United States and France are dealing with a challenge that has gone on for a long, long time. It's uncontrolled migration. In the United States, we are taking strong action to regain control over our borders and over our sovereignty. It's gone on for too long, and we've slowed it down very substantially, but we're going to stop illegal immigration. I know that you face similar challenges in France, and Mr. President, I admire the leadership you have shown in addressing them in a very honest and direct fashion, and not always popular. Both of our elections owe much of the success to the desire of everyday citizens to be heard, to be listened to, and to have control over their own nations and their own futures. Let us demonstrate through our partnership that the voice of the people will always reign. At all times, it will reign. During our meetings today, we also discussed the robust economic relationship between our countries. The United States is setting records in business, and we will continue. And I know that France will be setting records under your leadership very soon. We look forward to exploring increased opportunities for bilateral trade and investment based on the principle of fairness and, importantly, reciprocity. Mr. President, thank you again for accepting our invitation to the White House. It's been such an honor. The foundation of our friendship draws from the deepest wells of civilization and is sustained by our people's love of their history, culture, and liberty. For 2 centuries, the alliance between France and the United States has been the cornerstone of freedom. Now the strength of this mighty alliance is in our hands, linked together by fate and destiny. I am confident that our future has never, ever looked brighter. Thank you, Mr. President.
Merci, merci, Monsieur le Président, cher Donald. Merci à vous et à votre épouse Melania pour votre accueil. Et je veux vous dire combien nous sommes heureux avec mon épouse Brigitte et l'ensemble de la délégation française d'être durant ces 3 jours vos invités après cette formidable visite et l'honneur que vous nous aviez fait d'être présents pour le 14 juillet dernier à Paris. Vous avez rappelé, Monsieur le Président, et dans nos 2 adresses tout à l'heure, nous l'avons l'un et l'autre fait, l'importance et la profondeur des liens qui nous unissent. Ces liens remontent à la constitution même de votre pays, à sa révolution fondatrice, et ont jalonné notre histoire. Ce sont des liens basés sur nos intérêts réciproques et notre attachement profond à la liberté et la paix. À chaque fois que celles-ci ont été menacées, nous avons toujours été là l'un pour l'autre. Et nous l'avons célébré ensemble hier soir tous les 4 en nous rendant en effet à Mount Vernon, où nul autre mieux que George Washington pouvait illustrer la force de ces liens et de l'engagement de nos deux pays. Vous avez parfaitement rappelé, Monsieur le Président, à l'instant, tous les enjeux. Je veux peut-être ici revenir sur quelques-uns des sujets essentiels pour la relation bilatérale et au-delà. Le premier, c'est l'Iran. Vous avez rappelé tout à l'heure très clairement devant la presse, et vous venez de le faire, quelles étaient vos positions de campagne et quelles étaient vos positions en tant que dirigeant des États-Unis d'Amérique sur ce sujet. Il n'y a pas de mystère pour dire que nous n'avons pas les mêmes positions de départ sur ce point, et ni vous ni moi n'avons pour tempérament ou habitude de changer de position avec le gré du vent. Néanmoins, nous avons eu, je crois pouvoir le dire, une discussion très approfondie en tête-à-tête sur ce sujet. Vous considérez que le deal iranien, le JCPOA, donc l'accord qui a été négocié en 2015 avec l'Iran, est un mauvais accord. Depuis plusieurs mois, je dis que ce n'est pas un accord suffisant, mais qu'il nous permet en tout cas d'avoir jusqu'en 2025 un contrôle sur les activités nucléaires. Nous souhaitons donc pouvoir désormais travailler sur un nouvel accord avec l'Iran. Ce dont nous avons besoin, et je crois que là-dessus, notre discussion a permis d'éclairer pleinement ce choix et cette convergence de vues, c'est de couvrir 4 sujets essentiels. Le premier, c'est de bloquer toute activité nucléaire de l'Iran jusqu'en 2025. C'est ce que seul permettait de faire le JCPOA. Le deuxième, c'est de nous assurer qu'à plus long terme, il n'y ait pas d'activité nucléaire iranienne. Le troisième sujet essentiel, c'est de pouvoir stopper les activités balistiques de l'Iran dans la région. Et le quatrième point essentiel, c'est de créer les conditions d'une stabilité politique dans la région et donc de mieux contenir la domination iranienne et ses positions en Irak, en Iran, au Yémen, comme l'influence qu'elle a sur le Liban. Sur ces sujets, j'ai eu une position constante qui était de dire que nous devions justement trouver le cadre pour, ensemble, avec les puissances de la région, avec les dirigeants iraniens, réussir à trouver un accord. Je souhaite donc que nous puissions nous engager sur cette voie dans les semaines et les mois à venir. Cette voie est la seule qui permette la stabilité. La France n'a aucune naïveté à l'égard de l'Iran. Nous avons aussi un grand respect pour le peuple iranien qui, à travers son histoire, a montré toujours sa force. Et nous ne voulons pas répliquer les erreurs du passé. À chaque fois que nous avons voulu nous substituer à la souveraineté d'un peuple, de manière unilatérale, nous avons créé encore plus de terreur. Et je tiens à ces lignes importantes. Mais nous voulons pour nos alliés la stabilité durable. Et donc, je crois que la discussion que nous avons eue ensemble permet, en tout cas, d'ouvrir la voie de ce nouvel accord qui me paraît indispensable, sur lequel nous allons travailler, sur lequel nous souhaitons associer, au-delà de l'ensemble des partenaires européens, les puissances de la région et évidemment la Russie et la Turquie. C'est dans ce cadre d'ailleurs que nous pourrons, dans la durée, ensemble, construire une solution à la situation en Syrie. En Syrie, nous sommes engagés conjointement au sein d'une coalition internationale contre Daesh et les terroristes. Nous continuerons à œuvrer jusqu'au bout dans ce cadre et jusqu'à la victoire. Néanmoins, il nous faut dans la durée gagner la paix et donc éviter que la Syrie ne tombe sur quelque hégémonie ou partition que ce soit dans la région. Et pour ce faire, cette approche que nous venons d'acter ensemble permet d'inclure la situation syrienne dans le cadre de ce travail sur l'ensemble de la région que nous devons conduire. Et donc dans ce pilier d'encadrement régional de l'Iran. En Syrie, nous allons continuer à œuvrer ensemble au sein du Conseil de sécurité pour nous assurer que le droit international humanitaire, l'interdiction d'utilisation des armes chimiques sont pleinement respectés et nous prendrons, comme nous l'avons fait il y a quelques jours, toutes nos responsabilités. Mais nous allons désormais aussi œuvrer avec nos partenaires sur ce sujet à construire une solution politique durable, inclusive, qui évitera toute hégémonie et qui évitera, là aussi, de nourrir le terrorisme à venir. Nous avons, au-delà de ces sujets, évoqué ensemble le climat. Là aussi, nous connaissons nos désaccords. La France continuera à travailler sur des textes importants comme le Pacte mondial sur l'environnement, mais je crois pouvoir dire que nous souhaitons que nos secteurs économiques, nos chercheurs puissent continuer à travailler sur des solutions concrètes en la matière, et nous sommes l'un et l'autre attachés à ce point. Enfin, sur le commerce, vous l'avez évoqué, je me retrouve dans la formule qui a été la vôtre, d'avoir un commerce juste et équitable. Nous avons aujourd'hui, quand on regarde le commerce international, des défis conjoints. Il y a des surcapacités dans certains secteurs qui sont bien connus. Nous devons œuvrer ensemble pour éviter qu'elles ne déstabilisent nos marchés ou ne créent une concurrence déloyale. Mais je crois pouvoir dire que nous sommes l'un et l'autre attachés à ce qu'entre alliés, il y ait le respect du droit international commercial. En tout cas, la France y est attachée. Nous avons nos préférences collectives réciproques. Nous avons des situations que nous pouvons sans doute améliorer. Mais je crois que l'un et l'autre, nous sommes aussi attachés à ce que nos entreprises, nos milieux d'affaires puissent travailler sereinement dans un cadre clair et de long terme. En tout cas, j'y suis profondément attaché. Voilà, Monsieur le Président, en complément des quelques points que vous avez faits, les sujets sur lesquels je souhaitais revenir et vous redire combien les discussions que nous avons aujourd'hui, celles que nous aurons demain, se nourrissent tout à la fois de la force de ces liens historiques qui nous obligent et nous portent, et d'une amitié sincère que je crois nous partageons. Merci encore, Monsieur le Président, Madame, pour votre formidable accueil. Merci pour ces 3 jours passés parmi vous. Et merci également de souhaiter être au rendez-vous des défis collectifs que nous avons à relever. Ils sont importants pour les États-Unis d'Amérique, ils sont importants pour la France et l'Europe, et importants pour nos peuples. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Thank you.
I like him a lot. I want to thank our Vice President and Karen for being here. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We had a wonderful conference today, and I think especially the one-on-one in the Oval Office, we covered a lot of territory having to do with trade, having to do with Iran, and various other subjects. So I think a lot of good things are going to come out of our meeting, and I appreciate you being here. And we'll take a couple of questions. How about Jeff Mason from Reuters? Jeff? Yeah,
Thank
Jeff.
you, Mr. President.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi there. After your discussions today with President Macron, what is your thinking about a timeline for bringing U.S. troops out of Syria? And on one other topic, you mentioned today that you thought the leader of North Korea has behaved openly and honorably. This is someone who many people have accused of starving his people, killing family members. What did you mean when you called him that?
Well, we will start with your second part of the question, and I hope that we will be able to deal in a very open and honorable fashion with North Korea. I started a process, and when I did, everybody thought I was doing it absolutely wrong. But in the meantime, for 25 years, people have been dealing and nothing happened. And a lot's happening right now. I can tell you that, Jeff. A lot is happening. And I think it's going to be very positive. And I hope it's going to be very positive for North Korea and for South Korea and Japan and the rest of the world. But I am starting at a level that, frankly, I shouldn't have had to start. This should have been worked out a long time ago. This should have been worked out many years ago. We were discussing that. We shouldn't be having this situation happen to the United States and the world. This should have been resolved by other presidents and by other leaders of other countries a long time ago. With that being said, I think we're doing very well. Meetings are being set up, and I want to see denuclearization of North Korea. A lot of concessions have already been made. We have made no concessions, despite some of the media saying that I've made concessions. I haven't even discussed a concession, other than the fact that meeting is a great thing. And I'm sure that A lot of other people would have liked to have had the position we're having. I will say this, we put the strongest sanctions on a country that we ever have put on any country by far. China, President Xi has been very strong in helping us to solve this problem, in his case at the border. He's allowing very little to get through. I think he's doing that for a number of reasons. We have a very good relationship, and also it's very important in terms of trade, because I do play the trade card. If you look at what's happening with trade in China, it hasn't been fair for many, many years to the United States, and we're going to solve that problem. In fact, we're having Secretary Mnuchin and a couple of other folks heading over to, Bob Lighthizer, heading over to China at the request of China. They came here, as you know, last week, and we're having very substantive discussions on trade. But I think it all plays to the border and the fact that they have been extremely strong on the border, and very little has gotten through, much to the surprise of a lot of people. And I believe the trade will work out, but I also think that China has never treated us with more respect than they have over the last short period of time that I'm president. I have a very excellent, as you know, relationship with President Xi, and I think that relationship is very important as to what's happening with North Korea. So the end result is we'll see. Maybe good things will happen, and maybe we're all wasting a lot of time, but hopefully it'll be good for everybody concerned. As far as Syria is concerned, I would love to get out. I'd love to bring our incredible warriors back home. They've done a great job. We've essentially just absolutely obliterated ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. And we've done a big favor to neighboring countries, frankly, but we've also done a favor for our country. With that being said, Emmanuel and myself have discussed the fact that we don't want to give Iran open season to the Mediterranean, especially since we really control it to a large extent. We really have controlled it, and we've set control on it. So we'll see what happens, but we're going to be coming home relatively soon. We finished at least almost our work with respect to ISIS in Syria, ISIS in Iraq, and we have done a job that nobody has been able to do. But with that being said, I do want to come home, but I want to come home also with having accomplished what we have to accomplish. So we are discussing Syria as part of an overall deal. When they made the Iran deal, what they should have done is included Syria. When I say should have, before giving them Iran $150 billion and $1.8 billion in cash, $1.8 million in cash. If you think about this, before giving this kind of tremendous money, okay, $150 billion and $1.8 billion in cash, in barrels, I hear it was taken out, and in boxes it was taken out, cash. They should have made a deal that covered Yemen, that covered Syria, that covered other parts of the Middle East where Iraq is involved, where Iran is involved. They didn't do that. So we want to come home. We'll be coming home, but we want to have a very, very strong, we want to leave a strong and lasting footprint, and that was a very big part of our discussion. Okay? Thank you.
Just a follow-up, if I may, sir. On North Korea, you said you believe in complete denuclearization. What does that mean exactly?
It means they get rid of their nukes. Very simple. They get rid of their nukes, and nobody else would say it. It'd be very easy for me to make a simple deal and claim victory. I don't want to do that. I want them to get rid of their nukes.
And for President Macron, the president referred earlier in your meetings in the cabinet room to a potential deal between the two of you on Iran. Can you give us a sense of what that might be? And are you confident that you'll have assurances from President Trump that the European Union will be excluded from tariffs on steel and aluminum?
Look, as for the second question, is it the president to answer? But I just want here on the trade issue to be very clear. When you look at the trade issue between our two countries, they are balanced. There is no unbalanced relationship. Second, we are following and respecting the WTO rules because we are the one who contributed to the creation of WTO, and we think it makes sense to respect the rule you decided to create. in general, in life, that's a good method. Third, because I do believe that we have a very first issue on trade, which is overcapacities in steel and aluminium. It doesn't come from Europe and not even from France. And it's good to work together when you are allies, and especially when you work so closely together on security issue like Iran and Syria. So I'm confident about the future of the trade relationship, as I think it's part of a broader picture where our interests are totally aligned. As for the Iranian situation, and I think I detailed in my introduction, for me, the key pillars of this new approach we want to adopt. And it's exactly what President Trump said. We have nuclear on the short run. We have nuclear on the long run. We have ballistic activity. We have regional presence of Iran. We want to fix the situation for these four pillars. Syria is part of the fourth one. And what we have to work on, obviously with Iran and the different parties in the region, the P5 and our allies, is to find a fair deal where we can fix the overall situation. This is the only way to preserve sovereignty in the region and to build peace on the very long run. Otherwise, we will have to come back in the region because of new terrorist groups, for sure. And I'm very happy about the discussion we had together, because we raised very new issues and very new solutions together. And especially the fact that the Syrian crisis and the Syrian situation should be part of this broader picture. And the fact that we are here and we are today in Syria together as the international coalition against ISIS. But tomorrow we will have to find a way to fix the situation from a political point of view, not automatically from a military point of view, which means to set up a series of agreements, part of this big deal, in order to be sure that Syria tomorrow will be a sovereign country with inclusiveness and free people in a situation to decide for the future. This is very important, and that's our duty.
And I think we will have a great shot at doing a much bigger, maybe deal, maybe not deal. We're going to find out, but we'll know fairly soon. Mr. President?
Une question de la presse française.
Bonjour, Laurence Benamou, Agence France Presse pour la presse française. À votre arrivée, Monsieur le Président, vous disiez qu'il n'y avait pas de plan B, qu'il fallait maintenir l'accord avec l'Iran. Maintenant, vous annoncez un nouvel accord qui doit être négocié avec l'Iran. Alors, question, pourquoi avez-vous changé d'avis? Vous êtes-vous rangé à la manière forte que préconise votre ami Monsieur Trump, ou est-ce par pragmatisme, faute de ne pouvoir le convaincre? Et par ailleurs, les autres signataires de l'accord seront-ils, d'après vous, d'accord pour suivre cette décision? Merci.
Il m'est arrivé de dire qu'il n'y avait pas de plan B, c'était plus souvent pour la planète que pour l'Iran. Et je confirme qu'il n'y a pas de planète B. Pour l'Iran, si vous avez suivi l'intégralité des prises de position que j'ai tenues, elles sont parfaitement cohérentes avec ce que je viens de dire. Je vous renvoie d'ailleurs avec ce que j'ai pu dire devant l'Assemblée générale des Nations Unies en septembre dernier, qui était exactement de dire qu'il y avait le JCPOA, mais qu'il devait être complété par 3 piliers additionnels, le post-2025, le balistique et l'influence régionale. Je ne sais pas la décision que prendra le président Trump sur le JCPOA. Et c'est sa responsabilité. Le JCPOA, c'est le premier pilier de cet ensemble que je viens de décrire. Donc, je ne suis pas en train de dire qu'on passe d'un accord à l'autre. Je suis en train de dire c'est un des aspects du problème. Je n'ai jamais été aussi critique que le président Trump sur le JCPOA parce que je pense qu'on peut le compléter utilement. Mais quelle que soit la décision à venir du président Trump, et s'il venait à décider d'en sortir, je souhaite que dès à présent, nous puissions travailler sur un nouvel accord dont les 4 piliers seraient justement ce qui est aujourd'hui traité par le JCPOA, c'est-à-dire l'activité nucléaire actuelle, l'activité nucléaire post-2025, la situation régionale et l'activité balistique. Il n'y a donc pas de changement de point de vue du tout, mais une grande constance. Mais nous avons pu, ces dernières semaines et tout particulièrement aujourd'hui, aller au bout d'une discussion indispensable sur la situation de la région. Et je crois que nous avons convergé en particulier sur une lecture commune de ce qui se passe en Syrie, au Yémen, en Irak tout particulièrement, et du fait que le sujet nucléaire n'est pas le seul, qu'il y a bien un problème avec l'activité balistique iranienne et la présence de l'Iran dans plusieurs régimes de la région, et que notre volonté était bien de créer les conditions d'une stabilité dans la région. À partir du moment où on a construit cette convergence de vues, l'idée d'aller vers un nouvel accord qui permette d'inclure justement le règlement en particulier du sujet syrien me semble être une avancée forte de l'échange que nous avons eu aujourd'hui. Et je souhaite donc que nous puissions travailler avec l'ensemble de nos partenaires. Nous avons constitué, et nos ministres des Affaires étrangères les ont réunis d'ores et déjà, ils les réuniront à nouveau dans quelques jours, ce qu'on a appelé le Small Group, dont l'objectif est justement sur la Syrie de réunir des puissances alliées dont nous sommes partis évidemment, mais avec des puissances de la région. Je crois que nous devons travailler à l'échelle de ce Small Group. Nous devons évidemment avoir une discussion aussi privilégiée avec la Turquie et la Russie sur les sujets régionaux et sur le sujet syrien. Et donc nous allons maintenant élaborer cette méthode pour aller vers un nouvel accord. Là où je pense qu'il y a une vraie avancée qui permet de concilier nos vues et leurs différences, c'est que nous ne restons pas dans un espace vide. Je me suis toujours exprimé clairement contre une sortie sèche du JCPOA. L'idée de dire on déchire le JCPOA pour aller vers rien d'autre ne me paraît pas être une bonne solution. À partir du moment où nous nous mettons dans une dynamique qui consiste à construire un accord large qui traite des 4 sujets fondamentaux que je viens d'évoquer, la chose est profondément différente. Elle permet d'intégrer les préoccupations américaines et les critiques faites par le président Trump à l'égard de cet accord qui, je le rappelle, a initialement été poussé par les États-Unis d'Amérique, mais une autre administration. Elle permet de prendre en considération nos préoccupations de la région et je crois l'intérêt de tous nos alliés. Et cette grammaire de la vie des affaires internationales qui est que nous souhaitons respecter la souveraineté des États de la région. Et nous ne nous mettons pas dans une situation qui consiste à faire de l'intervention à tout va, mais plutôt à construire un cadre stable qui va protéger nos intérêts, construire la paix. C'est ça, je crois, la grande différence et la nouveauté de ce vers quoi nous avons convergé aujourd'hui. On ne déchire pas un accord pour aller vers nulle part. On construit un nouvel accord qui est plus large et qui permet de prendre l'ensemble de nos préoccupations.
And if I might add, they states, and as I alluded to, that in countries that are in the area, some of which are immensely wealthy, would not be there except for the United States and to a lesser extent France. But they wouldn't be there except for the United States. They wouldn't last a week. We are protecting them. They have to now step up and pay for what's happening. Because I don't think France or the United States should be liable for the tremendous cost. The United States is embarrassingly into the Middle East as of a few months ago, as you've heard me say before, and I don't take responsibility, but I would be very embarrassed if I had to, $7 trillion. And when we want to build, Mr. President, our infrastructure, everybody says, oh, we want to be careful with our money. When we want to fix a highway or we want to build schools and lots of other things, tunnels, bridges, they say, oh, let's be careful with our money. And yet we have spent $7 trillion in the Middle East, and we've gotten nothing for it. Nothing. Less than nothing, as far as I'm concerned. That's over an 18-year period. The countries that are there, that you all know very well, are immensely wealthy. They're going to have to pay for this. And I think the President and I agree very much on that. And they will pay for it. They will pay for it. We've spoken to them. They will pay for it. The United States will not continue to pay. And they will also put soldiers on the ground, which they're not doing. And we will, in fact, bring lots of people home. We will have a strong blockage to the Mediterranean, which to me is very important. Because if we don't, you have Iran going right to the Mediterranean. Not going to have that. But there is a chance, and nobody knows what I'm going to do on the 12th, although, Mr. President, you have a pretty good idea. But we'll see. But we'll see also if I do what some people expect, whether or not it will be possible to do a new deal with solid foundations, because this is a deal with decayed foundations. It's a bad deal. It's a bad structure. It's falling down. Should have never, ever been made. I blame Congress. I blame a lot of people for it. But it should have never been made. And we're going to see what happens on the 12th. But I will say, if Iran threatens us in any way, they will pay a price like few countries have ever paid. Okay? Yes, John, please. John Roberts of Fox.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for President Macron as well, but if I could to you, sir, first. Your nominee to run the Veterans Affairs Administration, Dr. Ronny Jackson, has run into some serious political headwinds on Capitol Hill with some serious allegations being leveled at him. I'm wondering what you know of those allegations, and do you intend to stand behind him?
Well, I haven't heard of the particular allegations, but I will tell you he's one of the finest people that I have met. And I think, speaking for Melania also, he's been the doctor for President Obama, I believe for President Bush, for me. I've gotten to know him pretty well. He's a great doctor. And it was a suggestion. Now, I know there's an experience problem because lack of experience, but there's an experience problem. The Veterans Administration is very important to me. We've done a great job with it, as you know, with the Accountability Act and many other things. Now we're working on choice. It's going to happen. We're going to take great care of our veterans. That's a very, very important thing. We've done a great job. But I told Admiral Jackson just a little while ago, I said, what do you need this for? This is a vicious group of people that malign, and they do, and I lived through it. We all lived through it. You people are getting record ratings because of it, so congratulations. But I said, what do you need it for? He's an admiral. He's a great leader. And they question him about every little thing. As you know, with the success of what will hopefully soon be Secretary of State Pompeo, everybody was very surprised. I heard 10 minutes before the vote yesterday on committee that he will not be approved at committee, which would be the first time in many, many decades that something like that would have happened with regard to a Secretary of State. Except I spoke to Rand Paul, and Rand Paul has really never let me down. Rand Paul is a good man. And I knew things that nobody else knew. And Rand Paul said, I'm going to change my vote. And he voted, and everybody was surprised. And he actually got an 11-9 vote, because as you know, Johnny Isaacson vote counts if it isn't the deciding vote. So it was actually at 11-9 with, I believe, there was one vote. What would you call that, John?
A present vote.
Not present.
No, present.
Oh, it's called present, okay. So it was 11-9, and that was a terrific thing. But they failed to stop him. So now they say, who's next? Who's next? And this person, Admiral Jackson, Dr. Jackson, is a wonderful man. I said to him, what do you need it for? And as far as experience is concerned, the Veterans Administration, which is approximately 13 million people, is so big, you could run the biggest hospital system in the world, and it's small time compared to the Veterans Administration. So nobody has the experience. What he is a leader and a good man. But I told him, I said, you know what, Doc? You're too fine a person. His son's a top student at Annapolis. He's a high-quality person. I said, what do you need it for? So he'll be it's totally his decision, but he'll be making a decision. But they failed with Mike Pompeo, and that was a big, big hit because they thought they could stop him and embarrass. The Democrats have become obstructionists. That's all they're good at. They're not good at anything else. They have bad ideas. They have bad politics. The one thing they do is obstruct. And that's why I'm waiting for, you would never believe this, I'm waiting for very good people like the ambassador to Germany, hasn't been approved yet. It's been in there for 11 or 12 months. We have Angela Merkel coming to the United States on Friday. We still don't have our ambassador approved. And at this rate, and many of the papers checked it out yesterday, and they actually said I was right. But it would be 9 years before these people are approved. We have hundreds of people in waiting to be approved, and the Democrats are taking 30 hours per person. They're taking the maximum time. They are obstructionists. That's very bad for our country. I said to Dr. Jackson, what do you need it for? So we'll see what happens. I don't want to put a man through who's not a political person. I don't want to put a man through a process like this. It's too ugly and too disgusting. So we'll see what happens. He'll make a decision.
So are you saying, Mr. President, that you will stand behind him?
I would definitely stand behind him. He's a fine man. I'll always stand behind him. I'd let it be his choice. But here's a man who has just been an extraordinary person. His family, extraordinary success, great doctor, great everything. And he has to listen to the abuse that he has to. I wouldn't, if I were him, actually, in many ways, I'd love to be him. But the fact is, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. What does he need it for? To be abused by a bunch of politicians that aren't thinking nicely about our country? I really don't think, personally, he should do it, but it's totally his. I would stand behind him, totally his decision.
And Monsieur le Président, if I could direct a question to you as well. You said that you and President Trump came to some agreement on the way forward in Syria. U.S. troops are really at the heart of any solution. How long, President Macron, do you believe U.S. troops need to stay in Syria? Through the defeat of ISIS, or do they need to stay through a stabilization period until an alternative to the Assad government is stood up?
First of all, let me say how proud and honored we are to be part of the international coalition today, alongside with the United States troops, in order to fight against ISIS. We decided to increase our contribution, and we are totally involved in this war against ISIS. And for sure, the very first goal of this intervention and the international coalition on the ground is to finish this work with ISIS, and definitely to finish with our enemies. And our enemies are ISIS and the other terrorist group. Beyond this military presence and beyond our troops on the ground, we will have to build, as I said, peace, i.e. a new inclusive framework, in order to be sure that Syrian people will have the opportunity to live in peace. All the different ethnics, all the different religious, all the different groups, and to be sure that there is no hegemony in the region. That's a diplomatic work that we've already started, but we have to finish. It's something different. So I would, if you allow me, I would separate these two issues. We are involved on the ground against ISIS. We will finish this war, and it's not to open a new war or to start a new war. But at the same time, we have to open a new work together. That's what we decided to do, in order to build in the overall region a new framework, and especially in Syria. We will assess during the coming weeks and months what we have to do. Because when you are probably much more at the end of a war, you have to adapt to the enemy and the reality on the ground. So we are not here to say, this day we will leave the floor. That's impossible, because it will depend on the reality on the ground. But for sure, what we want to do now is to finish this war with our troops, and we want to fix on the long run the situation to have peace in this region. That's our duty, and it's not just with our troops, it's with our diplomats, our teams, our common work, and obviously with all the allies in the region and people involved.
We've pretty much finished with ISIS, and we're going to be making some big decisions in a very short period of time, but we're working very closely together with France and with the President. Okay? Thank you very much.
Question.
Bonjour messieurs les présidents, Mathieu Coach, BFM Koech, BFM TV. Une question pour Monsieur Macron aujourd'hui. Depuis un an, vous entretenez une relation extrêmement amicale avec le président américain, inhabituelle même par rapport aux autres présidents. Pourtant, on voit bien qu'il y a un certain nombre de sujets de désaccord entre vous. Ils sont même de plus en plus nombreux. On les a vus éclater au grand jour dans le bureau Oval tout à l'heure sur l'Iran. L'accord initial, visiblement, ne pourra pas être sauvegardé. Alors, est-ce que cette relation peut avoir réellement des effets concrets pour l'Europe, pour la France, des effets bénéfiques? Vous avez parlé tout à l'heure de liens basés sur l'intérêt réciproque. Est-ce que c'est vraiment le cas aujourd'hui?
Oui, totalement. D'abord, je crois que si nous avons cette relation, c'est parce qu'il y a la relation entre nos pays, c'est parce que nous avons une trajectoire qui certes a des différences, mais fait que l'un et l'autre nous venons peut-être hors du champ politique traditionnel, et que nous avons l'un et l'autre, je crois, compris que nous n'étions pas d'un tempérament à changer d'avis facilement. La conférence de presse qui vient de se tenir aujourd'hui vous donne, je crois, la démonstration et la réponse, en tout cas, à votre question. Sur l'Iran, nous avons un désaccord sur le JCPOA. Mais je crois que nous sommes en train de le dépasser par la décision que nous avons prise d'aller vers un nouvel accord qui permettra de traiter la question en profondeur qui était celle du JCPOA, c'est-à-dire l'activité nucléaire, mais de la compléter avec 3 autres questions qui n'étaient pas incluses. Ce qui est nouveau. Si la décision, en tout cas, si l'heure ou un peu plus que nous avons passé ensemble, avait eu pour conclusion de dire les États-Unis sortiront du JCPOA et la France veut le défendre, alors à ce moment-là, notre amitié ne servirait à rien. Mais nous avons l'un et l'autre su évoluer pour, je crois, prendre en considération ce qui était important pour chacun de nos pays. Jamais nous n'avions jusqu'ici pris une position commune sur la résolution dans la durée de la crise syrienne, au-delà des sujets militaires. Nous venons de le faire aujourd'hui. Jamais nous n'avions ensemble pris une position pour dire nous allons aller vers un nouvel accord sur l'Iran qui justement sert à fixer tous les sujets de la région. Nous venons de le faire aujourd'hui. Je crois que quand il n'y a pas une relation comme celle que nous nourrissons et surtout un travail très intense entre nos équipes, il ne peut pas y avoir ce résultat. Mais il y a 15 jours, vous en avez vu aussi les effets. Il s'est arrivé par le passé que la France défende des positions qui consistaient à aller intervenir contre des armes chimiques et que les États-Unis d'Amérique et d'autres alliés l'abandonnent. Ça n'est pas ce qui s'est passé. Nous avons pris des positions communes. Nous avons décidé ensemble de ce qui était possible et ce qui n'était pas possible, dans un cadre légitime sur le plan international, comme 2 membres permanents du Conseil de sécurité, et nous avons conduit une opération militaire inédite, à un niveau d'intégration inédite, et je veux ici rendre hommage à nos militaires et aux militaires britanniques. Parce que les États-Unis, la Grande-Bretagne et la France ont mené une opération unique. Nous l'avons fait de manière précise, exacte, proportionnée, parce que nous l'avons décidé et parce qu'il y a cette relation. Donc, sur la Syrie, sur l'Iran, sur la crédibilité de la communauté internationale face à l'utilisation des armes chimiques, vous avez eu la preuve de ce que l'amitié entre nos pays et la relation que nous entretenons permet d'obtenir de manière très concrète. Et ce sont pour moi des vraies avancées par rapport à la situation dans laquelle nous nous trouvions, y compris il y a quelques semaines.
Well, I think that we have very much, I must say, I think many things that certainly most things we agreed with. We can change and we can be flexible. You know, in life you have to be flexible. And as leaders of countries, you have to show flexibility. And I think we actually get along on many of the subjects we discussed today. And I will say France is a great country. And I believe France will be taken to new heights under this president. He's going to be an outstanding president, one of your great presidents, and it's an honor to call you my friend. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
El siguiente video se reproducirá de manera automática en 8 segundos.
Voz activa. Onda. Tripet. Pausar.
Reproductor de video. Voz desactivada.
Grabar. Encabezado. Tripet. Controls. Pausar grabación.
Melania and I are truly honored to welcome French President Macron. Mrs. Macron.